Here's a poem for you by the 13th century Persian poet Rumi in a translation by Coleman Barks. The poem is titled, "The Diver's Clothes Lying Empty." You're sitting here with us, but you're also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. You're in your body like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you're wind. You're the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You're the fish. In the ocean are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. Welcome to the Crane Bag Podcast. I am Jay Leeming. Today we are going to explore a poem by the 13th century Persian poet Rumi. Thank you for joining me. Let us begin. Let's hear that poem one more time. Again, this is an English translation of the original poem by Coleman Barks. Let's hear that poem one more time. Again, this is a translation into English by Coleman Barks, the American poet, of a poem originally written in Persian or Farsi. The diver's clothes lying empty. Let's hear that poem one more time. The diver's clothes lying empty. You're sitting here with us, but you're also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. You are in your body like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you're wind. You're the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You're the fish. In the ocean are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. So this is a translation by the American poet Coleman Barks, of a poem which was originally written in Persian, or as we would say, Farsi. So those two languages are the same language, Persian and Farsi. Farsi being the more modern term, Persian being an older one. And we should attend to that difference. In my experience, when Americans want to speak praiseworthy things about that part of the world, they call it Persia. And when they want to criticize that part of the world, they call it Iran. So we basically treat the place as if there were two different places, as if terrorists come from Iran and poets come from Persia. which is not the case, right? I mean, they are the same. Persia is Iran. Iran is Persia. But we like to separate these things. We like to separate the violent possibilities inherent in us from our own capacities for beauty and joy. And in fact, it's not that easy. In fact, as we see in our own culture, in America, in Europe as well, historically, humans can do horrible, violent things, and they can also write poetry. And so it behooves us to get to know this culture better, especially when so many people, millions, have fallen so in love with Rumi's poetry. And Rumi himself was, of course, aware of the destructive and the creative capacities of human beings. His great spiritual teacher was Shams of Tabriz, a wandering holy man who he met one day. And he, learned a great deal from Shams, to put it mildly. And then Shams was eventually killed. He died under suspicious circumstances. And many feel that he was thrown into a well by folks who were jealous of his influence upon Rumi. So Rumi was aware of these things. Plus, he grew up in a time of great unrest. The Mongolian armies under Genghis Khan were coming from the east to attack the Muslim countries to the west. When he was quite young, his family had to leave their home and travel to the west, where they settled in the the city of Konya, which is famous for being his town. So violence, political chaos, and deep trouble were around him in the geopolitical world of his times. But nevertheless, he did not succumb to despair, but saw the potential as well for joy, awakening, and enlightenment in the people around him and in the world as a whole. At one point, he wrote about the Tatars, the Mongolian armies, and he wrote, "While everyone flees from the Tatars, we serve the creator of the Tatars." So he took a larger view, a cosmic perspective, we might say. And so we too should look with both eyes open and with our hearts open, and not divide this part of the world into the magical, happy land of Persia and the difficult, oppressive realm of Iran, but see the way these places are connected and the way, in fact, they are the same. Iran, from what I've heard, is a very poetic country, more so than my own, speaking for America. I spoke to a woman from Iran some time ago, and I asked her about poetry there, and she said poetry was everywhere in my childhood. It was throughout society. I was punished with poetry. I was rewarded with poetry. I was taught by means of poetry. When I did something wrong, my father would tell me to memorize a poem, and I would have to go do that. When I did something that he approved of, he would tell me a poem. He would say a poem aloud to me. Every household in Iran, so I am told, contains both the Quran and the collected works of Hafez, the Persian poet. Hafez is worth an entire different or several more different podcasts exploring his work, and we will do that as well. So I'm saying this just to get us a little closer to this poem, a little closer to the culture and the source of this poem. And this poem itself has much to say about the face we wear to greet the world and our inner self, right? You were sitting here with us, but you're also out walking in a field at dawn. You are yourself the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. So it's amazing, right? So he's speaking directly to you, once again, as someone like Walt Whitman might. And he's saying, well, you're not who you think you are. You are here, but you're also somewhere else. And notice how these images are related to a spiritual quest as well, and to spiritual, action. So, like, you're all walking in a field at dawn. You're up before dawn, which is if someone were praying, they might do that. And then you are the animal we hunt when you come with us on the hunt. So again, spiritual life, the divine, is something which needs to be hunted, which needs to be followed, tracked through this world. You're in your body like a plant is solid in the ground, yet you're wind. You're the diver's clothes lying empty on the beach. You're the fish. So it's a list, kind of things that you are, but it also is a progression, right? Because we began walking in a field at dawn, and then it turns out we're not just walking, but we are hunting. And then we're like a tree, a plant in the ground, which you might find in a forest, right? But we are also wind. And where does the wind take us? The wind takes us to the beach. And there are the clothes empty on the beach. Where is the person, right? Where is the person we've been seeking through all of these metaphors? Well, perhaps the person is not a person at all, but a fish. And we are entering the ocean. And then there is a stanza break, a quite wonderful use of that, I would say. I mean, the poem is in 2 stanzas, and here's the break right here. You're the fish. And then we get this pause because we're going into the ocean. Now, I'm told this poem is written in Farsi, but the word ocean in this poem is written in Arabic. Just sort of an interesting detail. Rumi knew Arabic, and of course the Quran is written in Arabic. So it is a sacred language to him. So just interesting with the way that is there. And then we get something a little more complicated. In the ocean are many bright strands and many dark strands, like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. Wow, interesting. So we've had these 2 realities, right? Like you're here with us, but you're out walking. You are who you are, but you're also an animal. You're a plant, but you're also wind. And now we have the ocean, which includes both of these opposites. It includes opposites. In the ocean, there are many bright strands and many dark strands. It's as if now we're in a realm that includes both of these options, and they are bright and they are dark. And these strands, which I would love to know what the original word is, these strands are like veins that are seen when a wing is lifted up. And what do veins do? Well, they provide blood. They make sure the wing can work, and so the bird can fly. And again, of course, to fly is could be seen as a spiritual metaphor as well. I'm not saying this poem is in code, definitely not. It's just what I'm seeing in it, knowing of Rumi's spiritual nature and knowing of his desire to teach and to awaken others. I feel like these are some of the feelings inside this poem. But as always, and in a beautiful way, you can just read it straight as it is. But what I'm seeing in this are, well, the ocean is a place which includes all opposites. And also there's these strands, there's these things in the ocean, these veins that can support a wing and nourish a wing, which we would use to take flight. And then he says, your hidden self is blood in those veins that are lute strings that make ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. And with that sentence, we get to something which is truly sort of delirious, I feel, because he's piling one metaphor on the other, you know. My love for you is like a rose. That rose is like a bottle of wine. That bottle of wine is like a rabbit in the grasses. You know, he's saying it's not just your hidden self is blood in those veins, but those veins are also lute strings, and they make ocean music. So it's a little crazy, I would say. But the confusion and the delirious quality of it, I think, are entirely intentional. He wants to make us delirious, a little confused. And then we end, with this ocean music, not the sad edge of surf, but the sound of no shore. I find it just marvelous. And this poem was most probably spoken extempore, as we say. It was just improvised. He just spoke it aloud and someone wrote it down. This is not the kind of poem where he sat at a desk and labored for long hours to get it down to exactly what he wanted to say. No, not at all. He's an ecstatic, Rumi is. So most likely he spoke this poem aloud, possibly while dancing, possibly while music was being played, and a scribe was like, that's good, I'm writing down everything he says, and wrote it down. Now, Rumi was a Sufi. Now, what is a Sufi? S-U-F-I. A Sufi is someone, a Muslim, who is following a particular path, a Sufi path. which is a mystical path, seeking union with the divine through ecstasy, through music, and through poetry. The word Sufi, some guess, comes from the word for wool, because Sufi dervishes, followers of Sufism, would wear a woolen robe, a plain woolen robe, and that's where their name comes from. That's what some say. His father was a Muslim theologian, which is kind of like, as I understand it, something like a priest and a lawyer put together, and perhaps a little bit of a politician. So the sacred, the divine, this is not a secular society that Rumi grew up in. So the secular, the religious, and the political are completely together. So his father was a religious teacher, but would also be called upon to decide matters sometimes based on the teachings of the Quran. We might consider what our society would look like if there, in the Supreme Court, we were calling on the words of Jesus, perhaps. Whoa, we don't want to go there in America. Whoa, we don't want to go there. Yeah, I know. Because we want to avoid fighting. We want to avoid imposing religion on others. We want to avoid, a bloodbath, because we've seen our forefathers saw the conflicts in Europe, religious conflicts, and we're like, whoa, none of that here, So, hey, I can totally see that and agree with that. But nevertheless, sometimes it does feel like we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So, in any case, Rumi's father, a Muslim theologian, Rumi, in his footsteps, was studying to be the same, and to be somewhat of a sober-minded person. But then met Shams of Tabriz, this wandering holy man, and was awakened to ecstasy, to music, and to poetry. And one of the things he began to do, besides write a ton of poetry, was to dance. And to this day, I am told, folks in the Sufi orders practice dancing. They spin around, and they do so by placing a nail in the floor, and you put your big toe and your neighboring toe around this nail, and you turn around and around, around and around. So feel that. Feel the ecstasy of the dance there, but feel also the container of it. We, in America, speaking for myself, we think of ecstatic dance, and it means, jumping all around the room, no boundaries, just, free. I'm so free. I'm dancing everywhere. Whoa, look at me. Whereas the ecstatic dance we're talking about in the context of Sufism is extremely focused, right? Extremely focused, and it has a form to it. And it is a pattern of spinning around. And notice how the pattern of spinning can include opposites. A strong motion one way and a strong motion the other way can be both encompassed, gathered up into this circular pattern, which can include wildly different viewpoints, we could say, of the body and of the mind and of the heart, and politically as well. Maybe that's what we need now, is a little more of the spiraling energy, which takes two opposing forces and gathers them into a single pattern, which is sustainable and endures, a pattern which imitates, which echoes, which rhymes with the spinning of the earth and the sun and the moon and the stars. So Rumi would dance, and his poems are like dances to me as well. They gather opposing forces into them, but there is a unity to them, which is quite beautiful. And his poems are formal as well. He was not a free verse poet. Again, freedom to us means no boundaries. That's what we think of. But Rumi is a terrific example of freedom because of boundaries, freedom by means of boundaries, both in his life and then in his work, in his poetic work. He wrote a lot of poems. Many of them are quatrains, so 4-line stanzas, which have a rhyme scheme and a meter. Some of them are odes, of which this poem is one. And then he wrote the Masnavi, a gigantic teaching poem. It's in English. It's like 3 big, thick books. It's divided into 6 or 7 books, I believe. And it's all in rhyming couplets, we would say. And it tells many stories. And this was entirely improvised. He would walk through the streets of his town, and his scribe would write down his words. And that's what the Masnavi is. It's referred to as the Quran in Persian by folks in Iran, so I'm told. The Quran, written in Arabic, right? But then you've got this book by Rumi, which is termed the Quran in Persian. So it is like a sacred book, many would say. And that poem, I will just say, it begins with the song of the reed which is taken out of the ground and made into a flute and then sings a song. So we go to Rumi often in the West. We go to Rumi for joy and for peace and for harmony, But there is a great deal of sorrow in his work. Sorrow over the troubles in the world, sorrow over the death of Shams, sorrow over separation. And this is never more clear than at the beginning of the Masnavi, where the reed is made to sing a song. Someone plays this reed, plays the flute, rather, and there's a song. But the song is the song of its separation, its distance from the earth, distance from its source, where it began. And that is a beautiful thing, but a sad thing is the meaning there, the feeling there. The distance between us is holy ground. The distance between us is holy ground. That's how a certain song goes. So Rumi also wrote many ghazals, which, again, is a longer discussion, but that's a poetic form of basically couplets in which the first couplet ends with the same word, both lines, and after that, every couplet ends with the same word. It's a repeated word. So there are more possibilities for rhyme in Farsi than in English. So it doesn't sound as Dr. Seussy as we might think in our language. But all of this is to say, Rumi sought freedom, ecstasy, union with the divine through form. And that is a hard thing for us to get these days. But I just want to remind us of that and feel that. And so, speaking of form, thinking of form, what does this poem sound like? Well, I do have a recording I made some years ago of a woman named Sonia from Iran reading this poem. This took place where? Well, you don't need to. Do you need to know? I don't know. It took place in my public library, and I met her there. We both had kids, we still have kids, and I recorded her reading this poem. And so the sound quality is a little wacky, but here you go. Here is this poem in Farsi.
به تن با ما به دل در مرغزاری چو در بند شکاری تو شکاری به تن اینجا میان بسته چون نای به باطن همچو باد بیقراری تنت چون جامه قواس بر خاک تو چون ماهی روش در آب داری در این دریا بسی رگ‌هاست صافی بسی رگ‌هاست کان تیرست و تاری صفای دل از آن رگ‌های صافی است بدان رگ پی بری چون پر برآری در آن رگ‌ها تو همچون خون نهانی بر انگشتی نهم تو شرم داری از آن رگ‌هاست بانگ چنگ خوش رگ ز عکس و لطف آن زاری است زاری ز بحر بیکنار است این نواها کی می غرد به موج از بیکناری.
So there it is. Check that out, huh? Just beautiful sounds. The E sounds in that is just fantastic, fantastic. So that's the poem in its native habitat. That's it as it originally is, So we should be aware of what we're getting when we're reading a fellow like Coleman Barks, who does a terrific job of bringing these poems into modern English. they speak as poems. They hit us as poems, and we read it and we're like, oh yeah, well, no wonder they love Rumi, because wow, check it out, But we should be aware of what we are missing. Barks frequently does take out straight up references to Islam. In this poem, I really don't know one way or the other, but there's other poems I've seen where there'll be a reference to a certain stanza of the Quran or a story in the Quran, and he'll just take it out. He'll just subtract it, erase it from the poem. So it has the effect of making Rumi seem less rooted in Islam than he actually is, which is makes things easy for us in the short term, but makes things difficult for us in the long term. And what I mean by that is that we start to see Rumi as someone completely separate from Islam, which he completely is not. He's completely rooted in Islam. He is a Muslim. But it allows us to separate him from that. And so we can demonize Islam, Muslims in general, as whatever you want to say, evil people or whatever. And not to see that, well, poetry has flowered out of that tradition. We see Islam too often as an oppressive force in this world, when in fact it contributes still to an amazing tradition of art and poetry and of music. And Rumi is the heir of that. He comes out of that. So to give us a poem and to subtract the Islamic references is dangerous and damaging to our perception of the world and of Islam and of Rumi in particular. Also, of course, he doesn't try to bring across the metrical power of these poems, which would be a hard thing to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, someone should try, Rhyme and meter, they just reach us in a different way now, and we tend to turn them off, Rhyme is a little more work in English, and so it is not that subtle, right? We associate it with children's stories or children's songs, We associate it with things that we really just want to hit ourselves over the head with, It's not as subtle as it is in Italian, for example, or in Farsi. So that's not there as well. And so this whole sense of the poem as a formal construction is missing. And what are these poems like in Farsi? Well, I can't really tell you, beside playing for you that little recording there. Other folks, among them a guy, Franklin Lewis, he's got this pretty intense book, Rumi, Past and Present, East and West, all about Rumi. He says, and he's a fellow who knows Farsi, he says that poetically Rumi is similar to Whitman for sure, in the way that he is so expansive and sort of cosmic, and the way also that he reaches out to the reader. But also musically, somewhat like Gerald Manley Hopkins, this guy Franklin Lewis says. Although he says Hopkins is a little harder, the meaning of Hopkins is a little harder to get. Rumi's a little easier to understand, actually, than Hopkins. But you probably know Gerald Manley Hopkins, right? The beautiful word music he has. So I don't know Farsi. I can't say one way or another, but that's his opinion, and I have no reason to question that. So this poem is found on page 51 of The Essential Rumi, translations by Coleman Barks with John Moyne, Moyne. And the version I got here, published by Castle Books. It's a wonderful book and has many of the sort of greatest hit Rumi poems that you might have heard and have been bouncing around our culture for a while. Some years ago, Rumi was the most popular poet in America, which is kind of amazing. I know poets aren't generally that popular in general, but still, nevertheless, to have a 13th century fellow who wrote in a foreign language be the most popular poet in America is kind of amazing. And that is due pretty much entirely to the work of Coleman Barks, who has been very successful in bringing these poems across into English in a certain way. But the whole thing is not to stop there. The whole thing is to keep going, to go through the work of Coleman Barks and to try to get closer to Rumi, which is an endless task, but the journey itself is the destination, right? So one way to do that is to look at other translations. So here is a different poem, an entirely different poem, translated by A.J. Arbery. It's a poem also by Rumi, I should say, obviously, and it's found in his Mystical Poems of Rumi, Volume 1. So Arbery is an older generation of translators than Barks, for sure. His dates are what? 1905 to 1973. Professor of Arabic at Cambridge University he was. So he did a lot of hard work with these poems as well. So I'm going to read you one of these. This is poem number 199. And it's going to sound a little funky and a little old, but that's what it is. And it's coming at you. Here it is. If I am hand-clapping, I belong not to the clappers. I am neither of this nor of that. I am of that mighty city. I am not for fluting and for gambling. I am not for wine and drinking. I am neither leaven nor crop sickness. I am neither like this nor like that. If I am drunk and dissolute, I am not drunk with wine like you. For I am not of earth nor of water. For I am not of the people of time. The mind of the son of Adam, what knowledge can such a mind have of these utterances? For I am hidden by 200 veils from the world entire. Hear not these words as from me, nor from this clear thought, for I neither receive nor seize this outward and inward. Though your face is beautiful, the cage of your soul is of wood. Run away from me, or you will burn, for my tongue is a flame. I am not of scent nor color. I am not of fame nor shame. Beware of my poplar arrow, for God is my bow. I seize not raw wine, nor borrow them from anyone. I seize neither breath nor snare, O my youthful fortune. I am as the rose bower of paradise. I am the joy garden of the world, for my spirit is flowing through the spirits of all men. The sugar bed of your phantom brings rose sugar to me. In the garden of realities I scatter the rose of 100 petals. When I enter the rose-showering garden of union with you, make me sit down, for I am a target for your brand. Love, what a mate you are! How strange, how marvelous! When you seized my mouth, my expression went inwards. When my soul reaches the city of Tabriz, to come to Shams al-Haq Udin, I will bring to an end all the secrets of speech. Well, I don't know, it's great, huh? I mean, yes, I hope you hear the difference, right? We're not in the land of Coleman Barks. It doesn't go down easy, and there's some things I would change, some things which seem antiquated, and some things I'm curious about. But nevertheless, I feel like the spirit of Rumi does come through. I am not drunk with wine like you. I am not of earth nor of water. I am not of the people of time, he says. The mind of the son of Adam, what knowledge has it of this utterance? For I am hidden by 200 veils from the world entire. So humans are referred to as the sons of Adam, basically, throughout his poetry. So the mind of someone who is a son of Adam, how can it know anything of these secrets I'm speaking? For I am hidden by 200 veils from the world. And then this complicated one, hear not these words as from me, nor from this clear thought. For I neither receive nor seize this outward and inward. It's like, don't think that these words come from me. Don't think that these thoughts originate with me. For I neither receive them nor grab hold of them. This outward and inward flowing, maybe we could say. So yeah, just great stuff, In the garden of realities, I scatter the rose of 100 petals. Yeah. When my soul reaches Tabriz, to come to Shams al-Haq Udin, I will bring to an end all the secrets of speech. So Shams was his spiritual teacher, of course. And it was customary in a ghazal, which this is, I'm pretty sure it's got to be a ghazal, to end the poem with your own name. Because these poems were oral, they were not written down. I mean, maybe they were written down a little bit, but they weren't circulated that way. They were memorized and recited across vast distances across the Muslim world. And the way you knew the author was the author put their name in the last stanza. So Rumi breaks this by putting not his own name, but the name of his spiritual teacher there, Shams of Tabriz. Or sometimes he puts in the word silence, which is a very classy move, right? And so you know it's his poem because the word silence is in there, like, wow, cool. All right, then. I think we're going to stop there. Rumi, I neglected to mention, born in 1207, died in 1273. May his works continue to teach us who we might become. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are more episodes out there, more episodes to be found on my website, which is jayleeming.com, jayleeming.com. If you are able to support this podcast, please do so. You can do that at patreon.com/storyjl. Thank you for listening, and take care.